Snelling's song, If I Only Knew.
I wish I knew what you're going through, 'cause maybe then I could save you. But the fake smile you always wore was just so hard to see through. You always seemed so happy when you were around, but little did I know behind closed doors you were breaking down. I tell myself it'll be alright, I try to forget about the pain and close my eyes. 'Cause every time I close my eyes, all I see is you. But you're gone and I'm trying to move on, so I still think to myself, if I only knew, if I only knew, you were always there when I felt alone. Or anytime I needed to talk, you pick up your phone. You calm me down and say that everything's alright. You would tell me you loved me, and then you'd say goodnight. But now my world is so cold, 'cause you're not there to pick up your phone. 'Cause every time I close my eyes, all I see is you. But you're gone and I'm trying to move on, so I still think to myself, if I only knew, if I only knew. 'Cause every time I close my eyes, all I see is you, yeah. And it hurts so bad to know there was nothing I could do. Did you even think through all the pain you put me through, that you would leave me here alone to suffer without you? But you're gone and I'm trying to move on, so I still think to myself, if I only knew, if I only knew, if I only knew, if I only knew.
Wow, Jackson, very compelling Very moving. First, welcome. Tell us about yourself, your family, your story, and congratulations, recent graduate from high school.
Thank you. Well, my name is Jackson Snelling. I just turned 18, and my family is not that big. I mean, it consists of me, my mom, and my brother. And that song, it has a lot of personal meaning. I wrote it about a very close friend of mine who passed away to suicide, and the whole premise of the song is more so like if I only knew what he was like going through, like what he was thinking of, I could have prevented it in some shape or form.
Tell us about
Um,
Alex. Tell us about Alex and his story. How were you guys friends? What happened?
we grew up as childhood friends, and we ended up separating because like he had to move. He moved to a different part of town. We still went to the same school though, and we were still close. And he had everything. At least you would have thought. Like he had a bunch of friends. He was good at like every sport. He could sing. He could play the guitar. Um, he had a very loving family. So he would have been like the last person you would have ever thought to have even considered something as tragic as suicide. And when it happened, it was no one believed it because no one knew about it. It was a post on Facebook. One of the kids we went to school with posted like "Rest in peace, Alex," and then it blew up because everybody's like, "Okay, we just seen him at school yesterday. What do you mean? What's going on?" And it took that night. The next morning, Alex's mom, came on and confirmed that what happened. And I remember just like sitting in my bed, not really feeling anything because it was really hard to believe. Shocking because, like I said, I mean, he had everything. You would have never guessed. So,
So you and I talked about this. I raised three boys, and boys don't talk, especially to their moms. So how would you know that there is something very painful going on? What would you say to parents? What would you say to young men your age about not letting it get to that point?
as far as the parents go, the only thing I could really tell you is I know a lot of people lead busy lives, like with work, managing stress, bills, and all this stuff. Um, but look for the signs. Any drastic change in behavior, or even slight, if they seem off, if they just don't seem like themselves, reach out and try to talk to them. And for people that are young men like myself, uh, always talk to somebody. Um, it makes things a lot easier, and it doesn't make the load feel as heavy. It's like you're pushing some of that off onto the other person, so you're not going through it alone anymore. Um, Talking does help. So talk to your family, talk to your friends, let them know what you're going through.
Uh, Daisha, Jackson said that you made him talk. He said, you tell us how you made him, and because we'll talk about later why it was important.
Uh, when Jackson strays from his normal routine, if he's not watching his television, if he's not listening to music, if he's not playing music, if he starts sleeping a lot, if he's not talking on the phone, or texting, then you know there's a problem. So I will literally just badger him. I will constantly say, "Okay, Jack, what's wrong?" And of course, you get nothing, Mom. Leave me alone. And I'll just keep at him, and he'll get mad. He's a typical teenager. He'll blow up. He'll get angry. But let them get angry, because the more they get angry and the more they fuss at you, at least they're talking.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I'm just stunned by the video. All of those people who have been impacted by suicide in that church, how did you make that happen? And what was the prevailing theme? Because as you said, after the video, they all kind of bonded and talked to each other. What was a common theme that you took away from that experience, Jackson?
They bonded over they were mainly talking about how, because they lost people that close to them, like different time spans. And it was all more so of how do I go on to the next day? How do I stay afloat? How do I keep going, knowing that such a huge piece of my life is now gone? So they were telling stories about their family members that they had lost to suicide, and it was really beautiful. I mean, they were bonding over such like a tragic situation, but it was bringing them closer, and they were helping each other. They were giving each other advice on how they get through day to day.
The premise of the video was actually, I had a vision for this video. Usually when Jackson writes a song, I will just envision how it's going to play out. So I was trying to connect a forgotten church to forgotten people, because people do not speak of suicide. It's almost taboo in this country. I don't know if people are ashamed of it or what the deal is, but they just don't speak of it. So I searched for an abandoned church to do this, to shoot this video. And Jackson was actually playing a gig, and I was telling someone my vision for this. They said, "Oh, we know someone." So they connected a church just 5 miles from our home here. And I guess the full circleness of this is the pastor of this church. I forget how many years he was a pastor of this church, but he had severe health issues, and he ended up committing suicide. He was buried in that yard to the church. So the church was very open of letting us come in and do this video. We put out a word on his social media if people would be interested in sending in pictures of loved ones who had committed suicide. And at first we were not going to put names or ages. And then someone said, why? Why not put the names and ages? You know, people need to know
how it affects people of all ages.
Mm-hmm.
So we started getting tons of pictures and stories in daily. Mm-hmm. And the youngest was 7 from Louisville, and then the oldest was 65 years old. So I think that's what caught everybody's attention, was actually putting a face, age.
Yeah. So Jackson, I have to ask you, have you attempted suicide?
I have. I was 14, and I was going through one of the roughest times in my life. The span of that year, when I turned 14, I lost 2 father figures, 1 to cancer. I lost 2 of my friends in a car accident. And then that following spring, my friend Alex committed suicide. So I was just in a really, really bad place mentally. And if it wasn't for my family, my brother, I wouldn't be here. So I'm just really grateful that I have such a loving family that got me help, and that I was able to put out a song that would also go on to help a bunch of other people that went through the same thing I did.
And what kind of response have you gotten? Last we talked, you had like 100,000 views on YouTube, and
I mean, it's a lot.
It's just exploded.
It definitely became bigger than we ever would have imagined it to be. It has 114,000 views on YouTube, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then it has a couple of 100,000 views on Facebook. And we still get messages to this day from people from all across the world telling us about their stories. And
so you are going to be the
What?
Okay, we lost you.
okay. Are you back? Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, now we can.
So you are going to be the special guest at the U of L Center for Depression's annual meeting, and Dr. Jess Wright is a director there. Dr. Wright, one of the things that Jackson really wants to point out, it's not just kids who are committing suicide. I mean, it's also very prevalent, I understand, in nursing homes. Tell us about the Center for Depression and what you offer.
Well, hello, everyone, and it's good to be with you. Jackson, thank you so much for your contribution and your mom. It looks like you're a great team and doing some real good. And I'm sure this video is saving lives. Think of all the people that have seen it and the impact it's going to have on them emotionally. So thanks for your work. The U of L Depression Center is a fairly large operation that tries to deliver treatment to as many people as possible. We see about 50,000 visits in a year of people with depression and other mood disorders and anxiety problems. And we try to do research to uncover new treatments, and we do education throughout the community and the region. Jean mentioned we were having a benefit dinner. It's actually on August 20th, and we're going to be having Jackson as a special guest at that meeting. So thanks for asking me to be here, and I believe we have some other people that are going to weigh in and give some comments on what we've just seen.
Yeah, Dr. Bargione, and I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Tell us what QPR is. Are you muted?
Not anymore.
Okay. There you are.
First of all, I want to thank Jackson and his mom for sharing his story and the story about Alex, because I think it's important for people to hear the stories and kind of take away the stigma around suicide in our community. And if I understand it correctly, the title of the song, which is really moving and touches my heart, If I Only Knew. And if I can just add on to that, what happens if you do know? What can you do? And that's really where QPR comes into play. QPR stands for Question, Persuade, and Refer. It's based on the same premise as CPR. So if you remember CPR, if somebody might be in cardiac arrest, any individual around that person, if you recognize the signs of cardiac arrest, you provide support by doing compression on the person's chest until like EMS is able to come and support that person, or that person's taken to the hospital. That is the same thing. That's the same principles that QPR is based on. This is for a training for the general public in recognizing someone who might be in mental health distress or who might be suicidal. It's a 90-minute training, and it helps you ask the difficult question. A lot of times, if we suspect that a person might be suicidal, it's real hard to actually ask that question because you might be afraid of the response. So in that training that we provide in QPR, it's a 90-minute training, and it gives you the warning signs of suicide, but it also gives you some strategies to have that difficult conversation. And so question, persuade. Question is what's going on with you. Persuade is create a mood or a situation where you can have that person then be referred to someone else. And the R is to refer. So knowing what resources in the community. So for example, Dr. Wright's clinic, or the local community mental health center, Centerstone here in Louisville, or the hotline. And I think later we're going to give out the hotline. But the QPR training, that has been one of our major focuses with the Louisville Health Advisory Board, the Behavioral Health Work Group, the Suicide Prevention. And since 2018, we have provided that training to literally thousands of people in our community, okay? And we've done it at churches. We've done it at after school programs. We've done it anywhere in the community where we're invited, we'll go and do that training. And as I mentioned, it's 90 minutes in length. Unfortunately, since March, when the pandemic hit, we had to be nimble and change the way we provide that service or that training. So now we're able to do that virtually. And I think a little later, we're going to share a link with everybody. If you want to be trained in QPR, or if you're part of an organization, your church or any social organization or your businesses, we'll have a link put up, I believe, and it's free. And we will schedule a QPR training for any group of folks who are interested in this. The one last point I want to make, I know Jackson shared his story about Jackson, about Alex, his friend, but if I can just broaden that context a little bit, that just in the last couple of years, I'll give you an example how pervasive this is in our community in Louisville and across the United States. If you filled up Rupp Arena and the Yum Center, that's about 47,000 people. That's how many people die each year in the United States by suicide. Okay, so that's how pervasive it is across the country. And then even in Louisville and the state of Kentucky, when everybody went to bed last night and when they woke up this morning, there was at least one person in Kentucky who died by suicide. And when you go back to bed tonight, there's another person. We're averaging about 2 people a day in the state of Kentucky who died by suicide. So if we only knew, we have to act. And please consider using QPR as a way of getting a tool to help support your loved ones, your friends, your family, and your colleagues.
Dr. Wright, you have just published an article or made a presentation considering the times that we're in now as it concerns COVID and the isolation. And what insight can you bring to the whole situation?
Well, it's obviously a tough time for lots of people, for all of us in a way. And there's been a big effort in the mental health community to try to keep services humming right along and even perhaps to expand them. Most of this has been by telemedicine, which has suddenly come of age. It was in the background for the most part, used sparingly. But fortunately, the state of Kentucky passed a statute a while ago before COVID that makes for parity and reimbursement for telemedicine delivered services compared to in-office services. And in mental health treatment, psychiatry, psychology, social work, so forth, we're probably in the best position of any medical specialty of being able to provide this by video link. So there's a lot of activity going on to try to deliver those services. So if you're a person that's suffering more now than ever with social isolation or with the stress of the pandemic, financial issues, other things that have come up, unemployment, and you feel like you need help, if things are getting desperate, don't hesitate. Reach out. You can just go to the internet and type in our little University of Louisville Depression Center, go to Centerstone, talk to your pastor, your rabbi, or religious leaders on some kind of a referral, and you can generally get treatment. So that's the main word about getting treatment, even in the face of these social restrictions that we have right now.
So we have some links on our chat feature, Rotarians. If you want to go to chat, there are links to the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, also the QPR training that Dr. Bargione was talking about. We've got a couple of questions from Charlie. Dr. Wright, are veterans more prone to suicide? And which other professionals have a high suicide rate?
Active military, as you may have heard, have had a higher suicide rate. That's been a real concern, real problem. And veterans that have had traumatic experiences, that have suffered from PTSD, depression, other things related to their service may be at somewhat higher risk. So the military medical services and the Veterans Administration have been about this and have been developing aggressive treatment programs to try to help individuals that may be prone to high risk for suicide. The QPR thing that was noted about is very important. I'll mention another thing that's really useful for veterans or anyone that may be thinking of suicide, and that's to develop with a clinician something we call a safety plan. This is pretty straightforward. It's pragmatic. I think there's some fears that even clinicians have of talking with somebody that's thinking of suicide, but it turns out that people that those thoughts are coursing through their mind almost always really would respond to and and want to talk. They want somebody to reach out to them, to touch them, and to touch them emotionally, and to learn about them. And when a clinician does it, they can develop something. We actually write it out. It includes things like what your reasons to live are, and that's a really important question. One of the things I teach medical students and residents is that it's more important to ask people about what gives them hope, what can gird them to manage the difficulties they have and keep going, as opposed to why they're so in such deep despair. Because people with depression that are thinking of suicide, there's like a veil that comes down over their mind and their thinking, and they're thinking mostly desperate kinds of hopeless, dark thoughts, and they don't have access to some of the more reasonable, hopeful kinds of things that might give them a sense of being able to keep going. So that's an important thing to ask. And the safety plan also includes things that the person can do, like practical things when they're getting desperate, who they can reach out to, phone numbers. So it's like a template or a game plan for when you're in crisis around suicide. So that's something that can be done for veterans. It can be done for teenagers, kids. There have been studies that have shown that if that one of those is done in an ER by the doctors in the ER or the social workers, it only takes maybe 20 minutes or something. The subsequent suicide rate drops in half. So it's very worthwhile doing.
Another question, there weren't as many people of color in the church video. Is that just people who wanted to participate in the video, or is suicide less common among communities of color?
Is that a question for us, or?
Well, yeah, well, yes, Jackson, for you, and then I'd like to either Dr. Bargione or Dr. Wright to respond as well.
I actually had an interview with Spectrum News a couple of months back, and we talked about how in communities of color, suicide is already a very difficult topic to talk about, to bring up. But in a lot of ways, in communities of color, religion is very strong. Christianity, more profoundly, and like the Bible and stuff like that. And or if it's not even, it's like big thing. At least I grew up hearing it, that if you commit suicide, you go to the bad place. You go there. So in the communities, I don't think that it would be something that they would be able to talk about so broadly. Seeing as religion is a big part of their lives.
Family pressure also.
And family pressure, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Dr. Wright, Dr. Bargione?
If I can just add a little bit to what Jackson was saying, there is some information that there are different rates of suicide in different parts of our community and different groups of folks. But the larger point is it's in every community in Louisville and around the state and around the country. So although there might be some differences depending, if you're black or brown or white, or your background and your experience, it's in every community. And then also, I think Jackson makes a good point that sometimes people don't talk about due to a variety of reasons. And one might be, the religious aspect of it, and in some communities, that's something you don't talk about it. Because then if you talk about, there's a myth out there that believes if you talk about suicide, you're going to get more suicide in your community. And actually, if somebody may not be thinking about suicide, but if you bring it up to them, it's like you're putting that thought in the head. And that's clearly wrong. That somebody who might be very depressed or suicidal, it's already there. And so by asking that difficult question, sometimes it's almost a relief for that person to say, oh, you've recognized my pain, or you recognize that I'm really struggling with this. And then you can work together to get that support, whether it's the safety plan that Dr. Wright talked about, or reaching out to a professional in the community to get the help that they need. But the overall picture is, even though there's some differences amongst the groups in our community, it's in every community in Louisville and around the country.
Here's another question. Is there any connection between a tendency towards substance dependency and suicide? Dr. Wright?
The answer is yes. People that have substance dependence along with virtually any other disorder that comes into the mental health arena, does increase the risk. Even schizophrenia does. Depression is the one that you hear about so much, but any of these things are a concern. Going back just for a minute, there was some questioning about whether any particular parts of the population that are more vulnerable to suicide. And I really liked Dr. Bargione's comments that it's hitting everywhere, which is true. I wanted to mention that the suicide rate, unfortunately, is going up in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
Almost all the other major causes of death, like cancer and heart disease, the rates are going down. But with suicide, it's going up. And we're not entirely sure why, but it's a real concern. At one time, the highest risk was people in my sociodemographic, older white guys, with white hair, particularly if you had a loss, like you've lost a partner of many, many years, that can really set you up for trouble. But what we've seen recently with the data is that middle-aged persons, there's been a surge in risk for suicide in middle-aged people. So let's see, are there any other questions for me at this point?
Yeah, one more question. There's a question about a blood test. Is there a blood test that can detect or diagnose loneliness or mental illness?
Oh boy, not really. There have been many attempts to do this through history. There's now a blood test which is very interesting that helps understand the metabolism of medications that one might use for depression. And you might find doctors that would suggest that you get that. It's easy. It's actually not a blood test. It's a swab. You just take a Q-tip and take a little swab inside the mouth, and you get your DNA and send it off to a lab. And it can give valuable information. Although I think it's probably been overrated a little bit, but it's very interesting that we now have that test available. That's the only one that I know of that we can get reliably that's going to help us manage conditions like depression.
Okay. Well, I want to thank you all for this wonderful program. Jackson and Daisha, thank you so much for your time. And we have a little time left, and Jackson has a bird who talks. If you guys have to leave, go ahead. But I'm going to go ahead and adjourn the meeting. Thank you, Dr. Wright and Dr. Joe, for coming. We really want to, Jackson, we're going to be following you and wishing the best for you and your success. Make sure your information is up to date with the Rotary Office in preparation to publish the 2021 directory. And guests, please stay for the short What is Rotary session as well. Thank you, and this meeting is adjourned. So Jackson, for those of us who are staying, can we meet, what's his name?
Bert.
Bert.
Yeah, Bert.
Bert, the bird. And Alyssa, if you want to unmute, I'm sure everybody might have a comment.
You're fine.
I have it so everybody can unmute if they want. It's up to them.
Hello? Hello? You gonna say hello? No, you're not gonna bite me. No. No.
He does not like my mom that much.
Say
But
hi.
this is my bird. His name is Bert. Oh, we're still muted. No, we're not muted.
Say hi.
Switching sides.
So what kind of bird is he? He looks like a parrot.
He is a double yellow-headed Amazon parrot. So yeah.
Double yellow.
Double yellow-headed Amazon.
Headed. So he's not double headed, but he's got two yellow patches, right?
Yeah.
He is the largest of the Amazons before they get into the macaws.
Yeah. How many words does he have in his vocabulary?
I'd say about 40, 50.
Wow.
We really don't know. He just
He talks.
he talks just he surprises us sometimes.
Yeah. He's beautiful.
He likes to look out the window. So when people are walking, he will talk to the people. So during the summer, we'll have a crowd of people sort of looking in our window on the side.
I think the worst case of it was whenever we had a perch on our front porch, and he kept screaming "Mom,"
Oh.
and people thought there was a child in the neighborhood that was lost and couldn't find his parents.
We're talking about you.
Yep. You have anything you want to say, Bert?
Hey, Bert. Hey, Bert.
You gonna talk?
Bert.
You camera shy?
Oh, he's watching me. He doesn't like me.
They're like children. They know when you want them to perform.
Yeah.
They won't. It's very interesting how intelligent they are. I mean, they can be moody too.
Oh yeah.
Now, if someone knocks on the door, he'll say, "Come in," and so we have to keep the doors locked. So that's a favorite of his.
What songs does he sing?
He will. So whenever I play, he likes opera music. We play opera music at night, and he listens to it, and he does that kind of thing.
Oh, wow.
He sings it to me whenever I play at my piano.
What's your favorite song that he sings that you sing?
Yeah, it's "Blind" by Jason
Blind,
Derulo.
yes. He loves that song "Blind" when Jack's singing.
What's his favorite opera?
Opera. I listen to a lot of Phantom Opera musical play. Dude.
But not?
He's not having it today.
No, he's not. I think it's because I'm sitting here.
Yeah, it's true. It's like when you want to demonstrate something, it doesn't work.
Not that too?
We don't want you to get bit on live cam.
There we go. I know. Can you get any closer to Jack? Huh?
Hello.
It's funny. They do. They choose one, and it's probably why he was a rescue, because they choose one person.
One person.
And if that person, passes away, that he's just not. They're not going to bond with anybody. Yeah. Very interesting. Yeah.
Oh, he's going to be with Jackson. It's Jackson's bird.
Oh, sweet.
Well, Jackson, it's great to have had you today, and we really appreciate what you did with that song. It's a great song.
Thank you. It was not. Thank you guys for having me. It's much appreciated.
We really appreciate you. Yeah, you guys take care, and maybe he'll start talking once I sign off.
Yeah, it was you. Clearly, you. So, Jackson, you have a support group. Have you started a support group? I think you were telling me the response that you were getting. Jackson? Oh, you're muted. There you go. Jackson, can you hear us? Okay, I don't know what's happening. Are you there?
Yep. You're back.
There you go. Tell us about the support group that kind of was a result of your song.
It's called the If Only Knew Support Group. It is on Facebook, and it is a lot of people that are going through the period of learning how to live after they lost a close loved one to suicide. So everybody in that group is very supportive of each other, and kind of like how everybody mingled at the end of the filming of the video, they give advice on how to get through the day, how to keep living. They post a lot of motivational quotes and scriptures. It's a really, really nice group to be in. Even if you're struggling with thoughts of depression and suicide, they're very, very kind to that too. So.
Very good. Good. Well, thank you both, and we'll be keeping an eye on you, and good luck on the 20th. I'm sure.
Awesome. Thank you.
Have a good day.
Bye, Gene.
Bye.
Bye. Take care.